If you are a neurodiverse professional or entrepreneur, whether that's ADHD, ADHD, OCD, and you don't resonate with any of these labels, but you know that your brain works differently than most people and you feel lost because while there's purpose in your career, you're ready to pivot, but because you're already burnt out, you don't know how to make that shift without sacrificing yourself. Then you're going to want to stay until the end of this video because I'm going to break down the most important step you're going to need to take to make that shift. Welcome back to the Neurodivergent Super Brain series, brought to you by the 25-Hour Day. My name is Colin Response, internationally award-winning performing artist, entrepreneur, and global ambassador for the #1 luxury brand in the world. But most importantly, I did all of this with what most people call ADHD and obsessive compulsive disorder. I disagree. And so I built a business that's helped now over 150 neurodiverse entrepreneurs and professionals rewire their brains from feeling overwhelmed by a lack of time, energy, or clarity to become masters at executing their ideas profitably and efficiently so that they could add an extra $10,000 to $20,000 a month to their income while cutting their working hours in half, ultimately so that they could enjoy living a balanced and fulfilled daily life in the process. And today, I am blessed to be joined with our fantastic guest, Kiki. Kiki is a neurodivergent athletic therapist who is ready to make a pivot in her career. And today I'm going to show her why she is stuck so that she can be empowered to decide whether or not she wants to remove these blocks from her life today. And like usual, I'm going to do it while walking backwards. So let us bring on our lovely guest, Kiki. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, amazing. Thank you. So I have your submission, and we're going to start by having you read it aloud.
Trying to navigate a space where I don't know which direction to take in terms of my career. I'm still enjoying pieces of it, but also constantly burnt out, but knowing that there's still purpose in it. I just need to pivot and want to be more focused on the community aspect, but just don't know quite how to do it in a way that is beneficial for me.
Thank you for the honesty, Kiki. The first thing we're going to focus on right now is determining what direction you would enjoy taking in terms of your career. Because knowing which direction to take is an impossible decision to make unless we've actually clarified what our options are. So my first question to you is, why don't you know what direction to take in terms of your career?
That's a good question. I think in part is just almost unlearning how the profession works in a way. I feel like there's kind of like one way to take it, and then things kind of branch off of that. But I've done most of that up until this point, and not to say that it's not fulfilling, it's just not sustainable for me personally. Um, and I don't know if it's necessarily like not knowing which direction to take. I think it's like I know what I would want to see for myself. It's just I don't know how to get there.
So let's clarify, where is it you'd want to be?
I see myself in a space where I see myself in it. A lot of the places I work in aren't very diverse, and community is something that is really important for me, especially in something that I'm passionate about, and especially because it's in a lot of the populations that I work with. But it's not something that's consistent, and I think I would like for that to be something that is consistent so that it fuels me to keep going because sometimes it's hard.
So let's be more specific about where I see myself represented.
Honestly, Black athletic therapists, Black athletes, just Indigenous athletic therapists, Indigenous athletes, just that representation in that aspect. And I think just in part due to just barriers that exist in the profession itself, there's not really much of that, but wanting to build that community of the people that are in that space.
Now, when you talk about seeing yourself, is it referring to specifically being Black and Indigenous, or is that combined with being a Black and Indigenous athletic therapist?
Both. And I think on top of that is just, like I mentioned before, making it something that is sustainable, that I can build off of.
So obviously, if the diverse community is not consistent, you want it to be consistent. So
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean to be consistent for you?
Where it's not a rare occasion to run into someone that's Black or Indigenous, where I look up and I see reflections of myself in the spaces that I work with, where it's not, where I don't feel isolated, and where I'm seen and I don't have to change anything about myself to fit in because everyone around me understands.
So now we have a clear understanding of what it's like to be in a place that's not consistent. We said here, some of this is in the affirmative. I'm in places where I see Black and Indigenous athletic therapists and athletes. Cool. It's not rare to see reflections of myself. I don't feel isolated or feel like I need to change everything about me to fit in. So this was inconsistent, obviously, in being not represented. So now let's reframe these to see what the affirmative of this is. So what is it to not be rare?
Normal or abundant or an overflow.
Cool. So we went from here, which is normal, to the actual polarity, which would be an overflow or abundant, right? Because normal is not the opposite of rare,
Mm-hmm.
just like normal is not the opposite of abundant. Okay, abundant, overflow. So which one of these resonates with you when you're thinking of to see reflections of yourself? Is it abundant reflections of myself? It's common to see reflections of myself, or however you would articulate it.
I would say where it's common.
Okay. And now, what is the opposite of feeling isolated?
Mm, in community or feeling loved and seen and heard.
Love it. Isolated community. We're looking at from a literal context. Being in a community is the opposite of being isolated. That doesn't mean you're emotionally not isolated, but then we start to speak about feeling loved. Okay, so now we're talking about the opposite of the emotional isolation. Now we're talking about even social isolation, being seen and heard, which ties into the emotional aspect of things. So this is a clear polarity. Now, feeling like you need to change everything about yourself to fit in. What would be the opposite of that?
Just being myself, coming as I am, showing up as I am.
This is one of my favorite parts because often when people are focused on trying to make a transformation where they found themselves to be stuck, if you will, what they ought to notice is their brain has been calibrated so far away from the experience that they are looking to embody, enjoy, or circumstance that they would prefer to be in, that they don't even realize that when they speak about where they're trying to go, they've replaced the actual destination with some form of neutrality. And we saw simple reflection of this earlier where we said, what is the opposite of rare? And you said normal. So it's like we're here, and then we went normal. And then you were like, oh, you're saying normal, this would be abundant. It would be overflowing. That's the polarity. So
Mm-hmm.
now we're seeing this pattern as it reflects here. As we ask the question, well, what's the opposite of feeling like you need to change everything about yourself to fit in? And we think that we're saying, well, I get to be myself. But that's actually not the polarity at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's right here. The opposite of feeling like you need to change the things about you would be being celebrated for who you presently are. Because the opposite of being celebrated is not showing up and nobody says anything.
Mm-hmm.
It would be celebrated. The polarity would be that people have problems with what I'm doing or don't like what I'm doing or talking down on what I'm doing or who I am. And so there's an impossibility to actually achieve this if we haven't neurologically identified, like if I haven't fired my brain to this place, because I've only fired my brain here. So we think showing
Mm-hmm.
up as myself. But in reality, that's not how your brain is digesting that, because showing up as yourself is like a neutral form. But there is no neutrality to the universe. Like when we say, I'm showing up as myself, what we're essentially saying is the bad thing's not happening. But what our brain is saying is, okay, all it's hearing is the bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because right now you feel like you have to change everything about yourself, but you are showing up as yourself, but feeling like you need to change everything about yourself. So technically the thing that's happening hasn't changed in this scenario. We're just saying, I get to show up as myself. I get to do what I'm presently doing, but the outcome's not that outcome versus I show up as myself, but the outcome is good outcome. So you have to actually pass that threshold and get clarity on these things because there are places in your life where you are celebrated. So your brain is familiar with that experience. However, if it doesn't associate that emotional state with the circumstance you want it to be in, it can never look for or find solutions or ways to get you there because it doesn't know that that's where you want to be. Because the only way it can understand things is through emotion and information. It's not speaking and understanding in the same way that you and I are right now. It's doing so through emotions and frequency and simply through subject matter. So when we say I'm being celebrated or people are excited about who I am or people look up to me, your brain fires to all the times that that's happened in your life. What you're experiencing in your mind as you think about those things is tremendously different than contexts where you can show up who you are. So when you think about the polarity, what do you think of? Do you think of being celebrated? Do you think about whatever language you would use to describe the polarity of feeling like you need to change everything about yourself?
I think being recognized and
Okay.
being celebrated rather than being tolerated.
When we think about the tolerated aspect, there's another aspect to that was when you're tolerating something, it's kind of like, "Ugh, I don't want this to be here, but it is." And of course, it's related to being celebrated and recognized, but there's a nuance there. There's a particular feeling that didn't come up for no reason. And so we want to go into that and find its polarity, which is some sort of language that is around, I need this thing to be here. And so, what language do you think resonates for the polarity of that? Is it that you are needed, that you are sought after? What does it mean for somebody to necessitate your presence?
Like being the my presence is my presence is my power.
What a massive difference between being in a space being tolerated versus your presence is your power in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Astronomically different than I'm just able to be in the space and it's fine. And it doesn't mean that if you go to do that, you won't make some progress. But I'm going to tell you right now, like the results you will produce will be astronomically different than if you're trying to just be accepted. Because one of those is also just passive.
Mm-hmm.
Your presence is your power. There's necessity to that. It's like, what would I need to do in order to enter a space where my presence is my power? Well, it contextualizes everything. Not only what actions would you take as an individual, you would have to think, okay, is this an environment where the assets I have would cause others to look to me as a valuable asset? Like you would have to ask that question if you wanted your presence alone to be power. And with that question could come up so many different answers that we're not necessarily going to get into right now, but you can see how your mind expands to actually realizing that that could have to do with the skills that you develop. It could be the relationships you bring into the space. It could simply be the space you are particularly in. There's so many factors with just this alone. Now, I'm going to highlight this because I want to come back to this. So we're still enjoying pieces of this, but you're constantly burnt out. How would you rather feel?
Fulfilled.
Amazing. Going to the purpose in it, needing to pivot. Now, this is interesting because you're like, I need to pivot. But what would be the polarity of needing to pivot?
Mm, not pivoting. I'm just going in a direction that feels right, I guess. I guess in simple terms, like chasing that alignment for what I'm looking for.
So cool. One direction, I feel great chasing that alignment. Well, wouldn't you say that's what you're presently doing as you try to pivot?
Yes.
Well, that can't be the polarity then, because the chasing, the going in the direction, the pivot, all of these presuppose that you're not in the experience. So I'll ask again, what would then be the polarity of pivot if to pivot would be to be that you are not in the experience and you are looking to get into the experience?
I am being in it, like just there in that space already.
I am in alignment with feeling fulfilled. Now, instead of wanting to be more focused on the community aspect, what would you be?
Creating that community in the community.
I'm in the community. And I don't quite know how to do that in a way that's also beneficial for me. What would you prefer?
I benefit from what I am doing.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, but that's it. I benefit from what I am doing. So I mentioned a section I was going to highlight. The reason why I wanted to highlight this is because I wanted to share an example for you, Kiki, of why it is so important for us to take that first step in order for us to be experiencing or embodying the circumstance we prefer or the version of ourselves we enjoy the most. We have to make this transition because this transition enables us to take the next step that would actually empower us with the ability to take action. So, for example, we determined that you're in places where you see yourself represented in terms of diversity and community, and that a diverse community is consistent. But we clarified that means that you're in places where you see Black and Indigenous athletic therapists and athletes. And it's common for you to see that as a reflection of yourself in community, being seen and heard, being recognized, being celebrated for who you are, and being in a place where your presence is your power. But when we look at common and this entire statement, it begs the question, what is common? Because if we do not measure common, we can never know whether we've achieved it or we haven't. We'll never know if we're getting closer to it or further away. And we will never be able to take intelligent or strategic actions to ensure that that becomes our reality. Because common can mean very many things, it's a very subjective thing. I eat French fries actually, I eat French fries way too much. I say I eat French fries maybe like 3 times a week, probably more. It's pretty common. But somebody else would be like, I eat French fries a couple of months. I would say I eat them pretty commonly versus somebody else who hasn't had French fries in months. So when I say common, does that mean that when I show up, the majority of the people in the space are Black or Indigenous, athletic therapists? Or is common that when I enter the space, the majority of the people are Black and Indigenous, period? Some of them are athletic therapists and athletes. And when I say The majority, we have to understand that that means 51%. That's all it means.
Mm-hmm.
It could mean that it's common. And when I say it's common, it means that when I'm in the space, everybody's welcome. It just so happens that because it's a community that's been built to help foster a community for Black and Indigenous athletic therapists and athletes that doesn't really exist anywhere else, 80% of the people in that space fall into that category. But we would have to determine what is common. Is common 80%? Is common 75%? Is common the majority, 51%? And until we determine what common is, we can't actually look at, oh, well, we're close to common. Maybe we're 30%. Oh, all we need to do is increase this by 21%. Like, what could we do to increase this by 21%? What are the things that people in this community need the most that they're struggling to get in other environments that we could be offering to bring more of those people in? And I share this more broadly for everyone watching this because this is not specific to the communities that Kiki wants to see herself in. This is relevant to your circumstance in whatever experience you are looking to create, exist in, or embody in yourself. Unless you are able to first shift this to the polarity of the space you do not want to be in. The only questions you can ask are centered around the place and the space you do not want to inhabit. So what happens? All you can do is get more information about the thing you don't want. That's all that can happen. If you're in this space where all that is present is the thing you do not want, all you're going to be doing is engaging with the thing you don't want. If you're carrying a glass of water and somebody bumps into you and the water spills, why did the water spill out of your cup? Oh, because the person bumped into me. No, the water spilled out of your cup because there was water in your cup. If there was coffee in your cup, coffee would have spilled out. If there was kombucha in your cup, because that's a little bit in my cup, that's what would have spilled out. And even though typically that analogy is being used to talk about the emotional experience of what you're carrying inside, our entire experience is an emotional experience, which is an experience of frequency. And so when you were in this state in an environment that we do not prefer, we're not even holding the cup. We're in the fucking cup. So like, that's what you're going to experience. So you have to fill the cup up with something else or get in a different cup in order for that experience to change. When you do, and you move over here, then you have something else. So any questions you ask about that something else, it's going to open up more possibilities of that thing. Something like, what is common? Maybe common is 80%.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a question you cannot ask unless you've first taken the step that we just took.
Not that I didn't think it was attainable, but just with the way I had framed it prior was kind of in that negative light. Like you were saying, like I'm in this cup, I'm kind of just stuck here and I'm trying to be myself, but nothing's changing. Versus if I talk about it in the sense of I am and looking at it as something that can be, I can be celebrated in the space that I'm in. I think just in my own experiences, I haven't had that. And I know that I bring value to what I do. And it's just a matter of being in that space where I'm celebrated for it, or creating that space to be celebrated for it.
Beautiful. What we talked about today is like a spoon that's being dipped into the ocean in terms of what's available when you learn how to leverage the way that the neurodiverse brain naturally works. So if you're tired of feeling stuck in terms of the pivot that you're looking to make because you're not sure what your destination is, or you're not clear on what steps to take to actually get you there, then click the link in the description of this video because I put a link to one of our free masterclasses so that you can see what is possible for you when you learn how to leverage the way that the neurodiverse brain naturally works. Now, unfortunately, at the time of this recording, our enrollment is presently full, but if you're somebody who wants to shift into the career that you are passionate about, you want to be earning 10, 20K plus a month, you want to cut your working hours in half, ultimately, so that you can enjoy a balanced and fulfilling everyday life, then do yourself the favor, just watch the free masterclass. You can be living a life that you enjoy, that is fulfilling, where you feel like you are celebrated, or just keep doing what you've been doing. The choice is yours.
It's just a matter of creating that space to be celebrated.
I want to say thank you to our lovely guest, Kiki. Thank you for sharing your honesty with everyone.
Thank you for having me.